So, children, a very good afternoon to everyone. So, we are supposed to start with the language processors. And as I said, that the language processors are extremely important because whatever we try to give instructions to the computer, we do it in our own language, isn't it? But the computer doesn't understand the language that we try to tell it or we try to instruct. There has to be an intermediator which will convert the human language into the machine language, and then the machine understands it. And that is what a language processor does for us. So let us just read the theory part first a bit, and then I will explain you in detail. Do not worry. So we know that computer understands instructions in machine code, isn't it? That is in the form of zeros and one. I guess this is what I've told yesterday, that machine, the digital machine, only understands the language of 0 and 1. 0 means off, 1 means on. It is difficult for us to write computer programs directly in machine code. Please understand, as I said, yesterday, that you cannot give instructions to the computers with the combinations of zeros and one. That is too complex, and it is not possible that everybody then can use it other than the scientists or the engineers. But we have this machine for the users. Okay, so if it's not for the users, then it's of no use basically. So we need something that is much better than giving instructions directly in the combinations of zeros and one. So the programs are written mostly in high level languages. High level languages means a language, a computer language, which uh, very easy to understand and very easy to program. So we have languages like you might have come across the names like Basic, C, C++, Python, etc. Right? Then we have Java. I don't know how they missed out Java. So Python and Java are the most popular programming languages at this point. So these are the languages which a programmer can use and can give the instructions to the computer with the help of easy English like words. Okay, easy English like words. So if you look at the Python program also, it is like very easy. If you it's very readable language basically. So if you see the code, you can actually figure out what exactly it means basically. So it's very easy to understand. So just like what we kind of type a document and we use the words like for, you, in, some English words. So similarly, we're going to use some English words in the Python programming language or in Java. And so that's the use of the high level programming languages. Please understand this. So high level programming languages will give us the flexibility or make things easy for us to program in simple English like words. So we don't have to give instructions as a computer programmer. Also, you don't have to give instructions in zeros and one. Fine. So a program written in any high level language. Now, whatever we have written in the high level language, does the computer will understand? No, the computer is not going to understand that. It is, going to understand only when that source code or anything that you have typed in as a instruction has to get converted into the machine code or written in assembly language is called as source program. So that is called as source code. So whatever you do, the program that you develop is called as the source code for the program. Understand it? The source code cannot be executed directly by computer. Why? Because that's a high level language that we are using. The source code must be converted into machine language to get executed. Please understand this. To be executed, so the program translated into machine code is known as object program or object code. Please understand this. So every source code has to get converted into a object code, which means the code that actually machine understands. A special translator system software that is used to translate the program written in high level language or assembly language, I'm going to tell you about this also, is called as is called language processor or translator. Okay, so the language processor can be of any three types, that is assembler, compiler and interpreter. Now children, assembler is something that is very close to machine level. It is also English like words, but it is not that easy also to understand. Assembler is used by assembly language. Now assembly language is something that is very close to machine language, and the coding is not as easy as compared to high level languages. So I will just show you the sample code how a assembly language looks like. So you can see this is a sample code. I'll just zoom it a bit. So you can see this is a sample code of an assembly language. Okay, and yes, you can read few things in this assembly language. That is something like global. Now we heard the word global. Something like section, push. Now LEA, we haven't heard of this instruction, miss this word. Call is something that we have used many a time. That's the English word. Pop is also an English word, isn't it? But internally this means a lot. Okay, this is an instruction to the machine, and this is an assembly language. It is kind of a bit understandable. Few words you can understand, but it is not that easy. It's a low level language, even this language. But this language has to get converted into zeros and one, but this is very close to machine. Please understand it. It is just next to the machine language, you can say. Okay, so assembly language is basically used by when we have to program basically any digital machine, just like maybe a washing machine, any digital device. Now in today's time you can see that even a washing machine, there is a digital nowadays, and there is a kind of a chip inside that washing machine. So you need to write a code which will make that washing machine function. So normally what you do, you just set the program for a washing machine, and then the washing machine will take the water, will spin, will dry, will do everything. There is a program that is feed inside that particular machine, and such a chip which is embedded into the electronic devices other than the computer I'm talking about. Okay, so such is system is called as embedded system. Embedded means the machine, the microprocessor chip is been embedded into these electronic devices. Okay, so we can program any machine with the help of this assembly language. Please understand this. We can do it with Java also, but this is something that is very very close to machine. So to actually program something like this, you need to have a deep knowledge about the machine. And assembly language is also used for system programming. Now when I use the word system, what does that mean? The programs which are developed for making the machine work, just like the os makes the machine work, your computer. So such kind of coding is normally used for making the machine work. We cannot develop application programs with this particular language. This is something that you have to directly interact with the machine. Okay, so this is kind of bit readable, but it is very complex. Still it is very complex. Okay, this is a low level language. This also has to get converted into machine language. Please understand this. So let us move forward. I will just read out now. An assembler is used to translate the program written in assembly language. See the word assembly language into the machine code. The input of assembler is a source program that contains assembly language instruction. The output generated by the assembler is the object code. Object code means the instruction, that is a machine code basically, or machine code. So they have written it, or machine code, understandable by the computer, which the computer understands. Okay, and everything I've spoke about the assembly and assembler. Now for compiler and interpreter, this is very very important. As a computer programmer, you should know the difference between a compiler and an interpreter, and I'm going to tell you the difference between a compiler and an interpreter with the help of a PowerPoint presentation. And with this, the concept of interpreter and a compiler will be very much clear to you. So let's begin. So interpreter versus compiler. So we have interpreter versus compiler, and we are going to look at this. Then the high level language, then the machine language versus the human language, and the Python interpreter. Now we are going to learn Python in future, and please understand Python uses interpreter and not a compiler. Java uses a compiler, please understand it, but Python uses I'm confused about Java, that maybe it's interpreter and compiler both, but Python uses only and only interpreter, please understand this. Okay, so if I move forward, interpreter versus compiler. So interpreter converts a high level language into machine, and the execution is done line by line. Now this is the theory part, isn't it? Now we will understand this, what exactly this means, what do you mean by line by line. And the second is compiler also converts high level language into machine, and the execution is done in one go. On go, not one go, it is actually. Okay, so interpreter and compiler both converts a high level language into machine language, but interpreter will do it line by line, compiler will do it in one go. All the entire code will be executed in one go. Fine. This is the theory part, we will understand this. So let us understand this with an example. Now suppose there are two people like Ajay and Vijay. Ajay is maybe a person from uh, from a northern side, which he speaks the northern language, and Vijay is from the southern side, so he speaks some other language. And these two people, Ajay and Vijay, they want to communicate with each other. Now maybe Ajay is a person only understands Hindi language and English, or let us assume like only Hindi, and Vijay only understands maybe Tamil. So Hindi and Tamil, this is, they need to communicate with each other. Now how are they going to communicate with each other? Because Vijay can only speak Tamil and Ajay can only speak Hindi. How they will communicate with each other? Now to their luck, they had one person known as Vinay, and Vinay is a person who can speak Hindi and he can also speak Tamil, and that's a great deal for these guys. So these two have a common friend, Vinay, who can speak Hindi and Tamil also. So that's like great deal, means they can actually now communicate with each other. How they can communicate with each other is, whatever Ajay speaks in Hindi, Vinay is going to listen to that, and then Vinay is going to convert that into Tamil and going to give it to Vijay. And then whatever Vijay speaks in Tamil, Vinay is going to listen to that, because Vinay can also understand Tamil, and going to convert that into Hindi and going to tell it to Ajay. So this way Ajay and Vijay are able to communicate with each other. Now how are they able to communicate with each other? With the help of an interpreter. There is someone between them. Similarly, children, that between the computer, assume that this is a computer and this is the user. Between the computer and the user, there is some kind of an interpreter which converts that whole thing. Human language will get converted into machine language. Okay, and then the machine language will get converted into human language, and that's what the work of an interpreter or a compiler is. So the user will use the, this is a computer and this is the user. So user is going to give the instructions in his own language, and the compiler and interpreter is going to interpret that whole thing and going to give it to the computer. So digital computer only understands the language of 0 and 1. We call it as binary language. And the computer, whatever instructions it is going to give, that will be in machine code. But then there is a software called as, we have this language processors, which will convert that into the language that the user understands, the human understands, right? So that's the work. So suppose if I type something like A on the screen, I'm using MS Word and I typed A. So obviously, if I type a capital A, you're going to see a capital A on your screen. But internally what happens is, this also goes to the CPU, that is the microprocessor chip, and it goes through the compiler or the interpreter. Interpreter compiler takes it, converts that into this machine code. So the capital A will something look like this. And then this goes to the computer, means to the microprocessor chip, and then the microprocessor chip understands that yes, the user has pressed A, and then he's going to give that output, and you will see that output on the screen, that is A. So you can imagine, just for one single press of the key, when you press a key, there are so many things that takes place at the background, and that is the interpreter and compiler. Both will convert the human language or the high level language that we use for the programming into the machine language. Please understand this. But there is a difference. Interpreter will do it line by line and compiler will do it at one go. Now if you go back to that, this is the same thing. I come back to the same thing now to understand the basic difference between an interpreter and compiler. Okay, now what happens is Ajay is saying a sentence, one instruction. Vinay is taking that instruction, converting that into Tamil and giving it to Vinay. Fine. Then Ajay says another thing, another instruction, another sentence, whatever you call it. And then Vinay is going to convert that into Tamil and give it to Vinay. So this is happening what? This is happening sentence by sentence. And I can say this is happening line by line. That is interpreter, children. That is called as interpreter. And if you want to understand a compiler, so what happens? First, Ajay will speak the entire speech. Whatever he wants to say, he's going to say everything. Vinay is going to take note of all that, whatever he said, the complete speech. And then that complete speech is going to get converted into the language that Vijay understands. At this point, as an example, it's Tamil. So he's going to convert that entire Hindi script into the Tamil script and then going to tell it to Vijay. So that happened. Now whatever happened right now was in one go. He converted the entire speech of Ajay into another language. So that is called as compiler, children. So when it's done line by line, it is an interpreter. When it's done one at all in one go, it is called as compiler. So that is the difference between an interpreter and a compiler. Then high level languages like Python, Java, JavaScript, C++ are high level languages. We normally use English like words while coding. Like words like for, in, while, to are used. Please understand this. And then this is a simple sample code of Python. This is the numbers that are given to the code. Okay, do not get confused, but this is like a sample Python code. Now you can really understand this, what exactly this means, other than this third line maybe. But you can say a is equal to 2, b is equal to 4, then print a, print b. Now you can very well understand. It's very easy to understand, other than this third line maybe. So Python is a very readable language, very easy to understand, and we are going to learn Python. And Python uses interpreter. Fine. So that is the thing, children. Now moving to next is, this is the interpreter and the compiler. I hope now it is very much clear to you. Okay, so one more point to tell you was that now if taken an example, interpreter and compiler, every language, okay, has a grammar, isn't it? English has a grammar, Hindi has a grammar. Now what does the grammar mean? The grammar means the rules. Every language has certain rules and you're supposed to use those rules. So if you're not using a proper grammar, maybe still it is understandable to the other person, but still it is not the proper grammar. You're making a lot of grammatical mistakes. So every language has its own set of rules and regulations. Similarly, even the programming languages like Java, Python has some rules. Those rules are called as syntax. Syntax means you're supposed to only type in this way, or you're supposed to only use a few characters. There will be a character set and you're supposed to use only that character set in your language while typing the code. Now interpreter and compiler, so what happens if you don't use that grammar, or so called the syntax, properly? The code is going to give you an error, and the interpreter or the compiler will tell you that there are certain errors. Errors means you haven't used the grammar properly for the language, you haven't used the syntax properly for the language. So suppose there is an error at line 2 and at line 4. Assume it, line 2 and line 4. So what will happen? Interpreter, since it does line by line, so first line it will say okay, it's all right. Second line there is an error. So what it is going to do, it is going to show you the error for line number 2 first and not for line number 4, because it is doing line by line. Please understand this. So it will show you the error for line number 2. Once you clear that error, once you just fix that grammar problem, the syntax problem. Then it will show you the next error, that is at line number 4. And that is how an interpreter will work, children. But if it is a compiler will take the entire code and show you all the errors. So if there are two errors at line number 2 and line number 4, it will show both the errors, that there is an error at line number 2 and there is an error at line number 4. That is the basic difference. Now I hope now this is very much clear to you. Okay, so let's move forward. So this is the best example. Now we're not going to read all this because we have just taken a perfect example for all this. Fine. And then there are utility softwares. This is very simple to understand, children. Then utilities like utility software, just a minute. Okay, a utility software is one which provides certain tasks that help in proper maintenance of the computer. So you can say example is what? Example is an antivirus software. Why do we install an antivirus software? So that your computer works smoothly, and if there is any error, if there are any viruses, then that viruses will be taken care of by your antivirus software. And if your computer gets infected by the viruses, then definitely it is going to affect the performance of your system. So that should not happen. Your computer should work smoothly, and for that we have the antivirus software. In fact, there are other utility softwares like the disk defragmenter, backup compression, etc. Disk defragmenter means we have this on the Windows. I can show you over here, disk defragmenter, and you can see that defragmenter. So defragment and optimize drivers. So what does this basically means? This is an app which is there on Windows 10. So this basically means like your hard disk, when you keep on storing data on your hard disk, and you keep a lot of data, then you delete a lot of data, then there are a lot of gaps that comes in your hard disk. Certain space is empty, then the next space is occupied. इससे होता क्या, आपका कंप्यूटर थोड़ा सा स्लो काम करना शुरू करता है, क्योंकि हार्ड डिस्क से डेटा रीड करना थोड़ा टाइम टेकिंग होता है. फाइन. तो उसमें बहुत फ्रैगमेंट्स आ जाते हैं. फ्रैगमेंट्स मीन्स पीसेस आ जाते हैं, गैप्स आ जाते हैं, बीच बीच में बहुत सारा डेटा डिलीट हो चुका है, तो वो एम्प्टी स्पेस आ जा रहा है. तो उसको सारे को एक जगह करना पड़ता है, सारा डेटा डिफ्रैगमेंट करना पड़ता है. एंड सो दिस इज कॉल्ड एज डिफ्रैगमेंटर. इट टेक्स अ लॉट ऑफ टाइम. डिस्क डिफ्रैगमेंटर बहुत टाइम लेता है, 3 से 4 घंटा वो लेता है पूरे हार्ड डिस्क को डिफ्रैगमेंट करना. तो वंस यू डू दिस डिफ्रैगमेंटर, डिस्क डिफ्रैगमेंट, so this is an app, and you start doing this, children, for C colon and D colon, then you optimize, turn on, whatever it is. So this, it takes a lot of time, and this will basically remove all the fragments from your hard disk, and then your reading of data becomes very easy, and then the performance of your system, the speed of your system will improve. So that is the disk defragmenter. Everything has a lot of deep meaning in computers, and you need to understand that concept should be very much clear. In fact, I can make this to explain very deep. We can go very deep into all this, but at this point it's okay. Then the antivirus, children, I'm not going to go into details. This is very straightforward. We require an antivirus for what? For removing the viruses. Then there might be viruses in your boot sector. So while booting the computer itself, there is a virus in that. So these are different types of viruses: file viruses, microviruses. These are small viruses that can get activated as some bots. Now bots are like automated, like viruses. Bots. There are good bots also and bad bots also. So those are called as microviruses. It damages the formatting of document, or even may not allow editing and saving. So please, children, I expect this that you should read it yourself, and it is very straightforward, very easy to understand. Microviruses. Then Trojan horse is something that you need to understand. Trojan horse, Trojan horse is basically, it is a code generally hidden in games or spreadsheets. Since they are hidden, the program seems to function as the user wants, but actually it is destroying the program. So basically it is also kind of a software which may give you the impression or certain kind of apps that you download, okay, and you assume that it's a good app, it is going to protect your system, or it is some other utility kind of app. But then once you install it, it is going to start working really against you, against your device, and it is going to steal the data, destroy the data. So it is going to basically trick you in a way. So that is Trojan horse. Basically, a Trojan horse does not require a host program to embed itself. It is a complete program. Its main objective is to cause harm to the data. They can create bad sectors on the disk, destroy live file allocation tables. That is, we have gone through this. That is FAT tables, and cause the system to hang. Okay, so those are Trojan horses. Also, there are Trojan horses which can steal your data as well. Trojan horse. Then worms are something that can only replicate itself. It does not really damage anything, but it will start replicating. Replicating means it will create duplicate copies of its own, and this way it will try to occupy the entire space of your hard disk, and then your hard disk will have no space. Understand it? Then this defragmenter, I spoke about this. Backup utility software, or we have this to backup our system. Compression utility, where we can compress a file. Disk cleaner, it's there. Disk cleaner was just right away in front of us. That is a disk cleanup, where we can clean the disk, unwanted files, temporary files, downloaded files which are actually not needed. That particular thing is been cleaned, so gets deleted. Please understand this, for the user to delete such files so as to create more space on the disk. File management tools. Then we're going to start with application software on Monday. What is application software, children? System software was the software used for the that is used for the machine, to make the machine work. And application software is for the user. For example, I am a user, I want to type a document, right? So I'm going to type it in what? I'm going to type it in word processor. Word processor means, एग्जाम्पल इज एम एस वर्ड में जाके मैं कोई एक डॉक्यूमेंट टाइप कर सकता हूँ. मुझे एक प्रेजेंटेशन बनाना है, तो मैं किस में बनाऊंगा? पावर पॉइंट में. तो ऐसे सॉफ्टवेयर जो यूजर्स के लिए बनाए गए, मशीन के लिए नहीं, यूजर के लिए, उसे हम लोग क्या कहेंगे? एप्लीकेशन सॉफ्टवेयर. सो आई जस्ट सी. So children, you can also read this yourself. It is very straightforward. See, presentation tool. तो क्या आएगा इसमें? पावर पॉइंट प्रेजेंटेशन. और सिर्फ पावर पॉइंट प्रेजेंटेशन ही एक सॉफ्टवेयर नहीं है, उस कंपैरिजन में दूसरे भी सॉफ्टवेयर आते हैं. ठीक है. स्प्रेडशीट अगर मुझे चाहिए, अगर मुझे बहुत सारा डेटा टाइप करना है, बहुत सारा कैलकुलेशन करना है, तो मैं क्या यूज़ करता हूँ? एक्सेल शीट, है ना. माइक्रोसॉफ्ट का एक्सेल शीट हम लोग इस्तेमाल करते हैं चिल्ड्रन, राइट. तो आप इसको इस्तेमाल कर सकते हो. सो दीज आर ऑल एप्लीकेशन सॉफ्टवेयर. तो क्या होता है एप्लीकेशन सॉफ्टवेयर? ऐसे सॉफ्टवेयर जो यूजर के लिए बनाए गए, जो जिससे वो अपना काम कर सके. ठीक है. देन वी हैव डीबीएमएस सॉफ्टवेयर, दैट इज डेटाबेस मैनेजमेंट सिस्टम. इससे क्या होता है चिल्ड्रन? दिस इज यूज्ड टू स्टोर ह्यूज अमाउंट ऑफ डेटा. ठीक है. Tomorrow I will take more on this. That is database management system. Then we have customized software. Tomorrow I will explain this more in detail. I will just go through what else is left. That is shareware, freeware, open source, free softwares. Okay, we are going to go through all this, and then the exercise part. Fine. So on Monday, children, we will complete this chapter, and the question answer part, what you are supposed to do, that I am going to tell you. Do not worry about that. And then the third chapter we are going to have, we will see to this. This is a data representation in computer, that is number system. We are going to start with number system, but on Monday first we will complete this. So there is one more period that we required. So on Monday we will catch again with this chapter, and we'll complete this. So I hope that you're understanding, children. If you want to really go for computer science, it's a very creative field, and I hope that you go for computer science, because it is going to give you a lot of advantage in the future. No matter which field you take, Maybe you take civil engineering or you take some other sector you go into, but you need to have this basic knowledge of computers, and a lot of knowledge of programming knowledge of computers is going to really make your mind sharp. It is going to give a logical thinking to your mind. Please understand this. Okay, so I'm ending this session, children, and Monday we will complete this chapter. I will give you the question answer part, what you're supposed to do in your fair copy, that is in your fair notebook. Okay, so bye for now, children.